occasional meeting which has been held in the Sahawi Room at Penalty House and via Microsoft Teams. This meeting will be recorded and made available to view via the Council's website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images and audio of those individuals present and or speaking at Planning Committee will be publicly available to all via the recording on the Council website. Please can I remind all members joining remotely to please leave their cameras on during the meeting and to use the hands up function on Teams when you wish to speak. Those members joining in the Sahawi Room, please also use your hands up function on Teams and turn on the Sahawi Room microphone when you wish to speak. Votes for this meeting will be taken via Microsoft Forms. When the vote is required, the form will appear on your screen, and then members will be asked to click on yes, no, or abstain, and then click to submit the vote. Please can I remind members that if you lose connection during the meeting, please make every attempt to reconnect. However, the meeting will continue as long as it remains for it. Committee services are on hand and we will be able to assist you to reconnect if necessary. Agenda item 1, to receive apologies for absence. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Roy Saranes, who is the usual chair of this planning committee. I'm chairing tonight as vice chair. My name is Elizabeth Aldworth. We have apologies also from Councillor Christine Woodland. If members are aware of any other apologies, please add them to the meeting chat or notify committee services. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and or prejudicial interest in respect of any item of business on this agenda, in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Code of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Are there any indications? And I can see one already. Councillor Greg Leeds, please.
How is this thing where I just press it? Can anyone hear me okay? Yes, thanks, Councillor Aldworth, Chair. I've already liaised with legal officers on this. I have two interests to declare. Application number 3 in the list, which is the former Anarian Labour Club. It's in my ward. I don't have any prejudicial view on that, so I'm hoping I can still take part in the debate. But the next one, then, Clazafelin Primary School. I am a governor of the school. I live very close to the school. My children went to the school, so I think in that respect, it would definitely be right to declare prejudicial interest in that. So I'll leave the room or take no part in that discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Leeds. Can you advise?
Yeah, that's fine, Chair. Councillor Leeds already sought advice, so you leave the Clazafelin matter, but just as a ward member for the Anarian Labour Club, Councillor Leeds doesn't have any personal interest that we will make, so he's kind of stay to that meeting.
Thanks, Lily. Thank you very much for that declaration. Are there any others? Caroline, our officer.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of agenda item 8, which is the Kilbrennus substation, I'm declaring an interest in that. I have a family member who is the really family of the
Thank you. Legal advice, please.
Yes, Chair. Mr. Powell will leave the meeting when an application is being discussed.
Thank you. Thank you for that declaration. I see no other indications. Thank you very much. Agenda item 3. The minutes of the planning committee, which was held on the 11th of June 2025, pages 1 to 3 of the pack. Could I have a mover, please, of these minutes?
Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Angel. And could I have a seconder?
Second, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Powell. Members, you will notice a pop-up box appear on the screen shortly. Please be aware that the vote that appears is for councillors' use only, and it should appear on screen for anyone. If it should appear on screen for anybody else, please close it down. Members, please give your vote when you see the screen. Yeah. Just a moment for the vote to be verified. Jim's been confirmed the minister in order.
Yeah, those minutes are duly carried.
Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item number 5. This application is number 25/0344/COU. 15 McDonald Road, Bargoed, CF81 8UE. Officer's presentation, please, and could you give your name, please?
Yeah, I'm Joshua Bowles, I'm the case officer for this application. Share the screen and bring up the presentation. Good evening, members. The first application this evening is at 15 McDonald Road, Park. The application is for the change of use of a C3 dwelling to a C4 housing multiple occupation feature. On screen is the site plan for the host dwelling outlined in there. On screen is a photograph of the front of the building, with the house in the centre being the application site. Photographs on screen are to the rear of the dwelling, showing the garage on the left-hand side and the rear of the dwelling on the right-hand side. Plans on screen show the existing floor plans. The property's access to the ground floor, which contains a hallway, 2 reception rooms, a kitchen and a bathroom. The first floor contains 3 bedrooms. The proposed layout is as shown. Proposal will increase the number of bedrooms within the dwelling to 5. Ground floor layout will be reconfigured to provide 1 bedroom at ground floor, a communal living and dining room, kitchen and a bathroom, and the first floor will also be reconfigured to provide 4 bedrooms. On screen is the proposed block plan. The cycle storage will be provided within the rear garden area. The condition has also been added to restrict the existing garage to the parking of vehicles only. With regard to parking, it's not considered that the proposed impact over and above the existing use of the dwelling with parking requirement. The proposal is also not considered to have an adverse impact on neighbouring properties. The building is existing, so there are no overbearing issues. The upper floor rooms remain as bedrooms, and as such, there are no new privacy impacts. With regard to the C4 HMO use, it's not considered that the number of HMOs in the Aberbargoed and Bargoed ward are at the point where the character of the area is at risk. Based on the number of known HMOs in the ward, which has increased by 1 since the drafting of the report, HMOs account for 0.3% of residential apartments in the ward. Far below the 10% tipping point reference in the Welsh Government Housing Multiple Occupation Practice Guidance. But by 10% is the tipping point where HMO concentrations can potentially have an impact on the character and balance of the community. As such, the application is considered to be acceptable and recommended for approval subject to the conditions listed in the report.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles. We have speakers on this item, and the first I'd like to call upon is Louis Lee, local resident, speaking in objection.
Thank you.
You have 5 minutes
Thank you.
to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, councillors. Thank you for this opportunity for letting me speak and to represent our community. I'm here before you today, not just as a homeowner, but as a neighbor, a resident, and someone who cares deeply about the well-being of our community. McDonald Road is already under significant developmental pressure. The proposed HMO at number 50 is not a one-off. It is yet another high-density change in a small area already carrying more than its fair share. To give you a full picture of what's happened on the road to date, number 25 is a home for 4 vulnerable adults with learning disabilities in supported living. Number 41 has recently been converted into 3 individual flats. Just down the street is St. Gladys Court with 33 supported flats and bungalows for older and vulnerable adults accessed via McDonald Road. We also have 2 retail businesses. One is the former McDonald Hotel, and the other is the McDonald's stores occupying numbers 1 and 2. This is a modern residential street, yet it is being asked to carry the burden of a scale of development more typical of urban cities. The proposal to convert number 50 into a multi-occupancy HMO would tip the balance further, both in numbers and in impact. Let's talk honestly about what this means for our vulnerable neighbors. These are people who live with learning disabilities, mental health conditions, and are elderly. They depend on a stable, predictable, and peaceful environment to feel safe and supported. The introduction of property with frequently changing adult tenants, often without ties to the area, creates uncertainty, noise, and unpredictability. This is not just inconvenient, it can be deeply distressing, especially for those who rely on structure and familiarity. Many of these residents are supported by the already stretched carers and services within the community. When the environment around them becomes unstable, it is they who suffer the most. We are already feeling the weight of overburdened infrastructure. Parking is a daily battle, especially with the mix of flats, the sheltered housing, and the local shops. GPs and dentists are overstretched and appointments are almost impossible to get. Public transit is limited and unreliable, and the buses barely struggle to squeeze through the narrow roads in our town, which is already full of parked cars. Adding more high occupancy housing into the mix will increase pressure on already strained services, and again, it will be the elderly, disabled, and long-standing residents who will feel the consequences first. Also, who will manage the fallout? The landlord is not based locally. When a problem arises, or multiple problems such as noise, antisocial behavior, maintenance issues, there's no one nearby to respond. Without local accountability, neighbor disputes go unresolved and standards slip. This is not the kind of situation we want next to our sheltered housing or family homes. There are very real concerns about the loss of privacy. In the rear window of 50, it points directly into the garden and interior rooms of number 49. The dividing fence is only 3 feet tall. How can neighbors enjoy their gardens or feel comfortable in their homes with multiple adult strangers possibly looking directly in? It's also worth noting that building work at number 50 appears to have already begun. As you saw in that picture that Joshua put up, you will see a fridge that was in the back garden. That was not there prior to the development. This alone shows a disregard for due process, this council, and the people who live around it. We would like to ask, where is the demonstrated need for this type of accommodation in Barwood? Are single-room HMOs what this town most needs? Or are we ignoring the pressing demand for family housing, the kind that helps people settle, build lives, and contribute to their communities? Because that's what most of us did. We moved here for the quality of life, we bought our homes, invested in our streets, and built relationships with our neighbors. We've worked to create this community, not just a collection of properties. And finally, I want to question the oft-quoted 10% HMO threshold. Where did this come from? Is it drawn from a statistic in large cities such as Cardiff, Newport, or Swansea? If so, applying it here is completely inappropriate. Small towns and villages like Barwood cannot absorb the same level of high occupancy housing without it fundamentally changing the characteristics of our neighborhood. Councillors, this isn't just a planning application. It's about protecting a street that already does more than its fair share. It's about safeguarding vulnerable residents, and it's about standing up for those who chose to live in the area and build a better life. So please, for the sake of balance, fairness, and community well-being, I urge you to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Speaker is local councillor for Bargoed, Councillor Christine Bissix Foster. Christine.
Good evening, Vice Chair, councillors, officers and members of the community. I'm here today not just as the County Councillor for Aberbargad and Bargad, but as a voice for those who believe our communities matter. We're told time and time again by the council that the resident is at the heart of everything the council does. Those are strong, reassuring words, but words alone are not enough. They must be matched by action. In our small, tight-knit Valleys town, community means everything. It's the lifeblood of our streets, where neighbours look out for each other, where children play safely, and where elderly residents know every familiar face in their street. Now we are being asked to accept a 5-bedroom HMO, property designed not for families or long-term residents, but likely for transient occupancy, high turnover, and often minimal local connection. This is not what our community needs, and more importantly, not what it wants. So we ask, is the resident truly at the heart of the decision? If it is, why is our collective voice being ignored? Impact on the local area. Let's consider the realities. A 5-bedroom HMO on a quiet residential street will increase traffic, noise and pressure on parking on roads that are already overstretched. It could bring a rise in antisocial behaviour, high turnover, minimal local collections. I just missed that. Let's be honest, HMOs often change the character and not for the better. These are not scare tactics, they are the lived experiences of many towns across the UK who have now seen their streets transformed by unchecked HMO developments. It's happening here now unless we stand up and say enough. The real needs of the town, what we need are homes that serve the people who live here, families, workers, the elderly, young couples trying to get on the ladder, not short-term lets to turn residential areas into unstable, high turnover spaces. The irony is there's a real demand in the town for affordable long-term housing, but that's not what a 5-bed HMO provides. So again, we ask, if we, the residents, are truly at the heart of the council policy, why are our needs being set aside for the sake of a planning approval that benefits so few? Okay, my closing marks. The council has a choice. You can uphold your own principles, the ones that say you put the resident first, or you can dismiss the very real concerns of the community you're meant to serve. 550 people signed a petition against this. There's one developer who doesn't even live in our county or country for that matter, more important than the 550 residents who signed the petition. Even our local MS, Hefin David, has sent a letter of supporting for the residents. A yes to this HMO says that words are just that, words. A no tells your residents that they matter, that their voices are heard and the community still counts for something in this valley. We're not against change, we're against the wrong kind of change. And this is the wrong kind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Can we have a speaker for the application who is online? Hannah Dugard. Hannah, are you there?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
5 minutes, Hannah, which will be timed.
Thank you. Dear councillors, I'm speaking today on behalf of the applicant who wants to thank you for taking the time to review their application. You can see that the application is to convert the 3-bed property to a 5-bed property by utilising the existing building and maximising the space without overdeveloping the plot. They have followed the planning guidelines and will also be carrying out the refurbishment to a high spec and standard like they have done for all of their properties. All room sizes exceed the minimum space standards and the plans have been carefully thought out and in accordance with policies. Further, the private sector housing have confirmed they have no issue with the proposed layout or occupation of this property. We note the objections put forward by Bargoed Council. However, in response to the first objection, we'd like to note that according to the planning regulations and policies relating to HMOs, it is not expected for us to provide parking, and therefore we don't believe this is a relevant objection with regards to any decision being made on this application. However, bicycle storage will be provided for the HMO, and please note the service users of the HMO do not typically have access to cars, so this should not have any noticeable impact on local parking arrangements. With regards to the third point, we believe this represents a form of discrimination that is unlawful as per the Equality Act 2010 by trying to refuse living accommodations to those who cannot afford a more expensive property based on a stereotyping of that sector of society. You cannot, within the laws of the Equality Act 2010, state that people who live in HMOs are more antisocial than those who aren't, and therefore do not deserve to have a place to live. You also cannot segregate out specific locations and not allow a subsection of society from living there who you might deem might be a problem purely based on this type of discriminatory stereotyping. Regarding point 2 of the objections, it has not been made clear which part of the local infrastructure would be strained by the additional residents. If this is referring to the parking, then this has been addressed already, but other than that, there does not seem to be a substantive basis for this objection. To reiterate, we believe the proposed development meets replacement LDP policies, and having reviewed the policy SW11, which as we understand it requires new developments to, among other things, be appropriate to its local context in terms of scale, height, layout and density, etc., not result in an unacceptable impact on the local amenity, loss of light or privacy or visual impact, and allow access for the widest range of people possible, and demonstrate that any traffic movements will not have an unacceptable impact on the local amenity, and finally provide adequate facilities and space for waste collections and recycling. We strongly believe this development meets these points and won't have an unacceptable impact on the local amenity. It's appropriate to its local context, and further, there is a management plan for the property which includes waste being collected regularly as well as monthly inspections. Thank you for listening to our statement, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, members. Mr. Burrows, do you wish to make any observations of what you've heard so far?
I think if we carry on with the questions.
Right, thank you, Mr. Burrows. Questions, members, in relation to this application. First, could you put that microphone off for me, please? Love. Right, no, thank you. Great. Right, I have an indication from Councillor Mansell Powell.
Unfortunately, the HMO planning application, they are popping up all over the water. I mean, we have the same concerns are being raised by residents on each one of the planning applications. And on page 29, it gives page 26, which gives a summary of the observations. So these are the typical observations and complaints or concerns that residents had on each of the HMOs. Now, obviously, we know as planners that we have hands are tied because we know that the plan is not part of the park is not part of the planning process. But could you just go through the summary of observations there, 1 to 11, and what the planning response is on those? That'd be okay. Page 26 it starts. I've got a few other bits and pieces. Do you want to do them all together? Or?
Well, on page 29, I've gone through and addressed each of those. Things I can run through them now.
Yeah, it was just obviously, you know, with the two speakers against, they're talking about the parking. That's not a parking, that's not a planning consideration. Local facilities GP, that's an health authority, you know. I know that those speaking out against it, familiar that those are not planning considerations.
If I could just come in for a second, just to clarify, parking is a planning consideration, but it's a matter of semantics really. But in this instance, what you're looking at here is an existing domestic property which has no car parking, there's a garage through here. So that dwelling is a 3-bedroom property. In accordance with our supplementary planning guidance on common that requires 3 parking spaces. It only has the one. The HMO is still a single dwelling, albeit in use by individual adults. flat has 5 bedrooms, but the maximum we can require on any domestic property is 3 parking spaces. So it's not that parking isn't an issue to consider, it's that the parking there that's provided on site is in accordance with our SPG effectively. So that's just a matter of clarification. I won't let Josh come in on the other points, but just want to clarify on that point.
I think that's fine, thanks, yeah. The licensing was another concern for me, yeah. I don't know if the owner or the proposed developers are aware, yeah, but I noticed further down, and this is back to the 10% within the area, talk about licensing and are waiting at 10%, and it says in the statement on page 29, sorry. Yeah, this one, in this instance, you know, not H or HMOs require a license, and that respect is unknown how many there are in the Caerphilly borough. And we're getting back this 10%, we know many there are in Bargoed. And as for like control of this post occupancy with the licence holder out the area, how can we reassure the residents that it's going to be looked after? Makes sense.
I think I'm reading it. Regarding license.
Extinction your microphone and put yours on. Michael, thank you very much.
Only 3-story HMOs require a license, so this one wouldn't. And back to the 10%, so that figure has come from research that fed into the Welsh Government's HMO practice guidance. That's the point in which the tipping point of the changing climate can start happening. Yeah, there's 60 houses on McDonald Road. With this HMO, there's still very few. There is less than 10% of those houses. So the figure I provide is the entire HMOs in the upper Bargoed board. So we're very long way off hitting the 10%. So I don't think we can argue at this point that'll be a change in the character of the area.
And the last one is something I picked up in the objections. It was to do with the sorry. No, right, yeah, sorry. And the other one was to do with the privacy of the neighbours next door with the low level fence. Could we do anything to at least get privacy for the neighbours and put an higher fence in it? That would be the direct neighbours. I think the objectors spoke, it was only 3 or 4 foot tall.
It wouldn't be reasonable to insist upon that, given that the windows are existing and the house is currently occupied as a C3 dwelling. We have no control over it at the moment, and this wouldn't intensify. So I think it wouldn't be reasonable.
That was it, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next indicated is Councillor Shane Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. Similar to Councillor Powell and some of the representations, yet again, we're asked to sanction as a planning committee this HMO. The return of 3-bedroom house into a 5-bedroom. Right. And we all know that a family dwelling is different to individual or independent individual people, because it could with partners or the 10 people in a property or more. I know we're told every time that that is not a matter for planning, that's a building, there's a building housing license afterwards, but it just seems frustrating that we as a planning committee again asked to sanction what is effectively cramming people in such a small space. That house, designed for 3 bedrooms, is now being sectioned off into a 5-bedroom, and I don't feel that does the community any good or the living arrangements for anyone any good. And there may be acceptable levels of parking spaces. I think there was stereotyping and discrimination, was discriminatory stereotyping words we used. I also think it's discriminatory and stereotyping to suggest that HMO residents don't have access to a car and they have to use a bike, or as we might recall some famous politician who just died and said, get on your bike. Not everybody's going to do that. And I think that assumption that people will just have a bike because they're members that they live in an HMO, I think that is I think that's disingenuous to say the least. But my overwhelming concern again, so I think there can be a negative impact in this particular area, this particular street. But the idea that we can create a 3-bedroom house and sanction such a 3-bedroom house turning into a 5-bedroom house gives me a lot of concerns. Slightly different as we've had before, going to a 4-bedroom house. This is another leap again. And I think that doesn't do the residents, as I said, any good. And I'm not sure it would do the people who it's intended to serve very good either. Thank you very much.
Respond.
Yeah, just to clarify in the use class, it's a C4 use, which allows a maximum of 6 people to reside in the house. So if it was 10, it would require separate planning permission as a sui generis use. So we couldn't assess it on the potential of 10 persons.
Microphone, please.
It's on. Really good.
I couldn't see that on the right. Thank you.
In regard to it being 5 bedrooms, we wouldn't have any control over that house being separated and create more bedrooms internally. So it could realistically be used for 5 adults if it was, for example, 2 parents and 3 adult children. And this wouldn't materially be different to that. They could also extend the house as well, which could provide extra bedrooms, and we wouldn't consider that to be crammed in either. And then with regard to car parking, it's not a assertion we made regarding that people who live in HMO wouldn't have cars. We assess it on the SPG with parliamentary area. And so that's not an assertion that we've made when doing the application.
Excuse me, we didn't hear any of that. We couldn't hear it back here.
I'm very sorry about that. Yeah,
It's a bit solitary.
maybe this mic is better, maybe, I don't know. But we put 2 microphones on, hopefully that'll be better reception. Please, could you?
Yes, yeah. With regard to the use, so a C4 use, a HMO allows a maximum of 6 people to live under that use class. If it was 10 residents, for example, it would be a sui generis use, which is a separate use class again. And so under planning legislation, there couldn't be 10 people living there, so it hasn't been assessed on that basis. With regard to cramming people into the house, it could, without planning permission, be separated internally to create 5 bedrooms. And so this would not materially be different to that. Then moving on to the car parking, it's not an assertion that we've made when determining the application that HMO users were less likely to have a car. We've assessed it on the basis of what our supplementary planning guidance tells us in terms of single dwellings and the car parking requirements.
Chair, if you don't mind, could I just respond to the one point? I wasn't suggesting we were going to house 10 people there. What I was suggesting is there are 5 people there that they all, if they may have partners or whatever, then that's the potential increase in the number of people staying there for a period of time, not necessarily living there. But the overwhelming, the main tenet is that there are 5 people, different people, as opposed to a family unit. And that's the point I think we make more time, but not something we might be able to discriminate against. But I think the main point is the 3-bedroom house turned into a significant bigger property.
Chief Planning Officer, please.
Yes, I got Councillor Williams. But I think the point is, what does, I mean, we consider this planning terms, so it's a material planning issues we are considering in this instance. And as a parking, for example, we address, the sleeping address, then interior cost address. So those sort of issues we can only consider. I take on board what the certain residents. This is the planning application. We've talked about the development and use of the land. It was wider impacts, like social behaviour, etc. They're all outside of planning remit. We must purely consider the application. The planning issues. They are land use of the
Next contributor is Councillor Margard, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've left my hand showing really because I'm going to continue talking about the number of HMOs of this type in this kind of location have normally been 3-bedroom houses, which we've increased to 4-bedroom because of the needs that we all realise that we have in the borough of Caerphilly, as we have all around Wales and the rest of Britain. Too many people don't have access to their own housing, and unfortunately for so many reasons. But going up to 5, I agree with Councillor Williams that is out of the ordinary for us normally, and that's going to increase potentially up to 5 new couples into the street, which we've just had explanations about we can't really control. So it's whether or not the ownership and controlling of this, if it gets the go ahead, is seen to be okay for the area. I wonder whether the applicant is actually fairly local and knows what this kind of access increasing might do for a street. And we've had explanations about the kind of people who currently live there, and whether or not so many people were strangers perhaps to the area for short times, long times, when they may get to know who else they're living with, may well make it much easier. So it's different to what we've been used to saying okay to. We have to accept that this is a need that we have in Caerphilly, and we have to do our best to meet it. But such what I can see as a small house suddenly becoming quite a large occupation is different to what we've normally done. But I assume that we have the the recommendation is that it meets all of the conditions that we have met before. So it's a bit more than usual. But there we go. I expect that I will have to say yes when we come to making a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Officers, any response to that at the moment?
No.
Righto. Next speaker, please, Councillor Greg Eade.
Thank you, Chair. As my colleagues have expressed some frustration that once again we're sat here and are asked to make a decision. On the one hand, we have the very human cost of these house and multiple occupation, which I deeply sympathise with, and yet you're asking us to make a decision based purely on planning regulations and principles, which obviously is correct. There have been several issues raised, which I think officers have tried to mitigate in the report. Verbally, I'm sorry I didn't hear everything you said either, but I would like to draw attention. We've discussed parking quite at length. Noise is a valid objection as well, and trying to understand, and more importantly, overcrowding. As other councillors have pointed out, this is the first time a 5-bedroom HMO has come before this committee. Previously, we've approved 4 bedrooms. Now, I wouldn't like to be an adult living with 3 or 4 other strangers in a very small, cramped, terraced house. And I think 5 bedrooms, 5 adults sharing an incredibly small terraced house is a step too far for me. It's a legitimate concern under Planning Policy Wales. I don't believe officers have demonstrated enough to this committee. If it was a black and white case, if the evidence was all stacked up, why are you bringing it to us to make a decision? You can use your delegated powers. I wouldn't have any involvement in that whatsoever. You keep bringing HMOs to us to make a decision. We're not experts. I'm going on trying to balance what I believe are the interests of the community against complex planning laws, which I don't fully understand. So I will be voting for the community on this one, and for the reason that I'll vote of overcrowding, 5 bedrooms rather than 4. Thank you.
Thank you very
much.
Yeah.
Councillor Officer Cowan.
Yeah, if I could just come in on that point, Chair. In terms of why this application is before members today, it's before members because the local member has requested that members consider the application. We would have determined this in the delegate powers, as you say, it's within our delegated powers to do so. As you say, we've considered an application for HMO on probably every community for the last 12 months. We've discussed the same issues. I've said the same things at every single committee. The issues that are raised by residents and often the questions we ask by members, I'm giving the same answers as well. I can't tell you anything different today to what I told you on previous committees, to be perfectly honest with you. The application is considered to be acceptable in terms of car parking because it complies with the SPG. In terms of privacy, there's no difference because the bedroom window that's overlooks the neighbouring property is currently a bedroom window. In terms of impacts on amenity, again, we've discussed the 10%. I've noticed the comment made by the resident in terms of that research may have been in relation to city centre development. It may well be, and I'm aware of my daughter's just finished university in Swansea, and speaking to you living on, every property was a HMO for the family. And yes, that's where issues arise. We're looking at here at Barnard Road, and I did a quick calculation. It speaks to us that McDonald Road is a quiet residential street. McDonald Road is one of the busiest roads in Barnard. It goes on from Hillview Road onto McDonald Road, onto Northern Road. It's one of the main routes from the town centre up to the leisure centre into the school. McDonald Road itself has got 60 properties. I don't know what the figures are. It's probably close to 180, 200 properties on the whole of that stretch. And we're looking at here, from the calculations suggested by the residents, 3 properties of a HMO type nature and 2 retail properties on that stretch. We're nowhere near at this moment in time changing the character of that street in terms of 3 properties on that street. And that's what we've got to look at. As Ryan said, from a planning perspective, we can only look at the planning issues. Is it an impact on highway safety? No. Is it an impact on amenity? No. Is it an impact on change to the character of the area? On the basis of the figures we have now, the answer has to be no. I understand the concerns of residents. I understand the concerns of members in respect of the concerns of residents. But I would be remiss of me to sit here and not advise members that if we refuse the application on the basis of issues which aren't planning issues for a start, or issues which we've already discussed and considered to be acceptable, if the applicant goes to appeal, we would have significant difficulty in defending that appeal. And my advice would be that we lose that appeal. Members have to have that in mind when they make the decision, because we can only make a decision on planning matters. In answer to your question, Greg Cosby, I would rather these matters we wouldn't be discussing issues every month. They're usually why they run, because residents want their airs, they do their, that's understandable. That's what the process is used for. But unfortunately, no matter how much we discuss these matters, until we're at a situation where it's like Swansea, where you've got 50 properties or 52 being HMOs, we're going to be struggling to refuse applications of this nature.
On the issue of the overcrowding, though, Carwyn, I don't know if you addressed that, 5 rather than 4.
In terms of overcrowding, if you look at the layout of the property, we do consider the amenity of residents moving into a property. Not so much as we would as the housing department in terms of the licensing or the HMO. This probably doesn't need licensing, but we would look at this in terms of, does each room have a window? Is there enough room for a bed and then a seat or a sofa for them to sit out? Because clearly you're going to be using it as a bed sit. And looking at the layout of this property, there is adequate space for that to be accommodated, and there is then still a living room within the property. So it would be difficult for us to say that there's an overcrowding within this premises. Notwithstanding it's going from a 3-bed to a 5-bed. A 3-bed property, as Joshua said, it could be an adult and 3 adult children. Parents and 3 adult children. It could be parents, one adult child, and an adult child and their partner, and then in a tennis property. There's no reason why this property couldn't be 6 adults already. So there is no change from a planning perspective from what could be there under the C3 use to what is proposed under the C4 use.
Very much. Have an education from Councillor Powell again. Answer these.
Yeah, sorry, only a quick one, Carmen. On page 31, it talks about installation of sprinklers system, not in Sandwich Point building control. I'm just wondering why that was added on the bottom under advisory notes. It said they would recommend the relevant person engaged with the control. To determine whether the proposed dwelling requires installation of sprinklers. Just with my block, I would have thought that would have been
It may well be under the legislation, councillor. So maybe I'll be in the legislation. It's not planning legislation, so we couldn't enforce it. Building regulations would enforce whether it's sprinklers. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, Ian.
And it mentions your rent smart meters as well. They may well have controls as well, but it's certainly not something we can control in the planning.
Okay, thanks for that, it's great.
Thank you. Councillor Alan Angel, please.
Thank you, Chair. We put a bedroom downstairs and one upstairs. So downstairs, you taking out the dining area or the living room area?
And share the screen again, show the plan. It's the proposed floor plan. So we're showing a bedroom downstairs and a communal living area.
So the communal area just for seating and
Yeah, and then the existing plan shows an open plan. What used to be 2 rooms by the look of it. Dining room, living room, that's been knocked into 1 currently.
the 3 bedrooms upstairs.
Yeah.
Now, my wife's grandmother, when she was alive, lived in McDonald Road, and I know one of the bedrooms up there, which we considered the box bedroom, not an actual bedroom. And when my son and daughter were going university, we bought a house in Tree Forest next to the college, which was a 3-bedroom turned into a 5-bedroom. And in that room, you had room for just a bed and a small cupboard. Most of the students spent their lives living out of suitcases. So we straight away turned it back into a 3-bedroom house, so our children and my son-in-law now could live a decent life. So me personally, I'm totally against this. Well and truly, there's no way should this be turned into a 5-bedroom, no way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your contribution. Members, we've debated and now I have to put to you the recommendation, which is that permission be granted, subject to the conditions contained in the officer's report. Do I have a mover of that, please?
Thanks, the Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howell. Do I have a seconder, please?
Okay.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Any amendments?
I'm sorry, Chair, I didn't catch that. Did the councillors move rejection?
No, moved granting.
Okay, thank you, Chair, sorry.
I wasn't sure that.
We'll now go to the vote. The vote will take place on Microsoft Teams. Members, you will notice a pop-up box appear on your screen. Please be aware that the vote that appears is for councillors' use only. If it appears on any other screen, please close it down. There's a moment for verification.
Members, that recommendation is duly carried, so the officer's recommendation has been approved, 9 for and 4 against.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Lane, our legal representative. Thank you. Members of the public wish to leave at this point, they may, otherwise they can stay for the remaining part of the planning meeting, which could be lengthy. Thank you for your attendance.
Excuse me.
I got off.
Right, sorry about the delay. Agenda item number 7, please. This is application number 25 of Bleak 0168, Bleak LA, which means local authority. Class Felin Primary School, Lewis Billy, CF83 3FT. And the case officer is Helen Winsor. Helen, would you like to take us through the application?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen, the presentation of it. Right, so as it's been said, it's an application for development at Plas Felin Primary School in Lewis Road, Caerphilly. So on the screen, you've got your location plan there. The proposal is to construct a 2-form entry primary school that will replace the majority of the existing school that's already on the site. There's an aerial photograph there. I don't know how well you're able to see that, but the school site is the area in the middle of the screen, with the woodlands located to the north of it. So I've got photographs here of the site as it is now. This is a photograph of the site frontage. Maybe you can see the buildings in the background there. The existing buildings on there at the moment. There's a single story. There's 2 main blocks on there, and some smaller buildings also dotted around the site as well. This is a photograph of the building taken from the playground. This is actually the infant block, so only one of the larger buildings on the site. There's also a junior building on the other side of the site as well. And photograph of the playing field on there, which is largely proposed to remain as the existing playing fields from the school, which is on a lower level to the school as it sits currently. There's another photograph here just to sort of show the kind of buildings that we got on the site. So as I said, they are single story at the moment. I don't know if you can see in the background as well. It also shows the relationship with some of the houses that are on Morgan Street to the south of the site as well. Again, we've got another photograph here of the site boundary with some houses that are located further down that street as well on that site boundary. So in terms of what's actually proposed to replace those existing school buildings on there, this is the site layout plan. So the existing single-storey buildings that are on the site have been proposed to be replaced with a 2-storey L-shaped block. So the L-shaped block in white on that layout plan towards the south of the site. Parking is proposed to be to the north of that. You've also, at that higher level, You've got outdoor play areas which are proposed as well, outdoor learning areas, and then it drops down to the level of the existing field at the back. Just go through the floor plans, got a ground floor plan. It largely holds the infant accommodation and also the nursery and childcare provision and the school halls as well. First floor, there's less accommodation at first floor level. That's the junior accommodation and some of the staff accommodation too. And you've got a roof plan, as you can see on the roof plan. There are solar panels that are proposed and also plant that's proposed on that roof as well. There's the elevations that are proposed as part of it as well. The elevation that's marked as the southwest elevation will be the one that's facing towards Lewis Drive, towards the road, and the one that at the bottom southeast elevation will be the one that's facing towards Morgan Street, and that's just a 3D view there. It's a bit better view of what it might look like. It's proposed to be sort of finished in brick at the bottom with a metallic cladding at first floor level. So just to go through a few of the issues that they're on the site. In principle, the development of the school is considered acceptable on the site. Obviously, it's being used as an existing school at the moment, and it's considered acceptable to redevelop it for a school that's more sort of modern and up to date in nature. The key concerns that are being raised in respect to this from neighbours of the site are in relation to transport and parking, and also in relation to neighbour amenity as well. So in respect of transport and parking, concerns being raised regarding an increase in that due to an increase in numbers. However, the increase in pupil numbers proposed from the current capacity of the school, notwithstanding that the attendance is actually below that at the moment, the increase in numbers of pupils is small in terms of what the capacity of the school would be. At the moment, the school has a capacity of 394 pupils, and that would be increasing to a capacity of 420. It should be noted that that doesn't include nursery and childcare provision, but that's anticipated to be stay the same as what it is at present. Therefore, on the basis of that, the application is considered acceptable in respect of traffic and transport considerations, subject to conditions in respect of active travel measures and travel plan for that development. In respect to neighbour amenity issues, we've had issues raised principally from people living in Morgan Street. If I just go back to the layout plan, just to sort of show you the relationship and that's. I apologise, that's not Pat sort of showing it the best. Oh, there we go. There's a black bar on my screen, which is now gone. There are properties that are located to the south of the site within Morgan Street, which back onto the school. Obviously, the building is going to be quite close to them.
Excuse me, just a minute. Can you speak up a little bit, Helen? I'm a bit concerned about the sound volume.
Oh, right. I'll try and perhaps go a little bit closer to the microphone then.
Thank you very much.
There's properties on Morgan Street to the south of the development, which back onto the school. Obviously, the building is going to be quite close to them, and it's going to be increased in height from single storey at present to 2-storey. However, it is considered to be far enough away that it's not that it's considered acceptable in respect of its impact on the neighbours, on the amenity of neighbours. There's also the issue of plant that's been raised again. If I go back to the layout plans and with the plant on the roof, there's been concerns raised regarding noise from plant and that it may cause disturbance to neighbours because of the plant being on the roof. However, that plant, having looked at the noise report and that having been assessed by our environmental health officers, is considered to be acceptable, subject to compliance with conditions. Just a few sort of updates on this one. There's an application that's referred to a prior notification for the demolition of the school within the report. It's referred to as pending consideration, but just to advise that since the report was written, that has actually been resolved and no further details were required for that, so no prior approval was required to be submitted for that. The landscape architect has also provided some further comments requiring some further amendments to the landscaping scheme that's proposed. It's considered though that these can be dealt with under the existing conditions that have been recommended. I will, however, be requesting that in the event that members are minded to approve the application, be requesting delegated powers to amend condition 2, which is the list of plans and documents, as we have had some further plans in which do sort of clarify details rather than actually add anything to the details that have already been available for this application. Just one final point as well is also, since the report has been written, we've had a further local member who has also written in to make a representation on the application in support of the application as well. So just in conclusion to that, the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've 3 speakers in connection with this application, members, and right. Think it okay. Our first speaker is a local resident, Mr. Dean Jones, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Yes, Mr. Jones.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. As one of the closest neighbours to the school, I'm grateful for the opportunity to voice some concerns over the tenant plan development. I make it clear I do not oppose a new school being built into the school. My wife currently works for the school and our children attended in the past. I fully understand the new school is needed. However, the current plans do not properly address some genuine impact and proposals have on our property. It's disappointing that no one has approached us to discuss these concerns directly and put our minds at ease prior to today. I would ask why this hasn't happened. That aside, I ask that these concerns are be given full consideration today. After all, once the panels and builders move out, we are left with a permanent impact of the decisions. This is not simply a grumpy neighbour objecting. I'm raising real concerns that are generally concerned about, which everything need answering. Issue 1, noise. Primary concern is noise. I understand the plans heat pumps will be installed very close to our property boundary. I'm an experienced tradesman. I can tell you from my time experience, heat pumps to this side of Croydon are very noisy. They will never be increased the decibel rate on our property, both internally and externally, likely more than 10 decibels. We understand at least one pump runs 24 hours a day. This is very concerning. This will result in a constant drone being heard on our property. This will significantly affect our enjoyment of the land and potentially impact our well-being. Not only that, but the value of the property is extremely likely to be diminished as a result. Do not accept the current plans to mitigate the noise will be effective. We would like to ask why the pumps need to be so close. Why is this spot being selected in our interest of our well-being? We ask you to move them to another area of the site. If you are unfamiliar with the noise an industrial heat pump can make, I would urge you to go and listen to one and ask yourself if you would like this noise by your house 24 hours, 7 days a week. If I play a constant noise in this meeting, perhaps eventually you'd take account of soundproofing measures. I bet by the end of the meeting you'd ask me to turn it off. If the plans go through, it won't be turned off. I will have to live it, you won't. Respectfully, please can we consider when it comes to place. Issue number 2, privacy. Current plans propose a two-storey building. I am told that the building is 22 metres from our house, and 12 metres from the boundary. This may sound like a decent distance away, but it isn't. At 11 metres at its highest point, the building will tower above our garden and be visibly constant by school users. More worrying, it will mean school users will be able to see directly into three of our bedrooms in the house. The thought of this private bedroom being visible to others is uncomfortable and very upsetting. The impact on privacy is not insignificant. I asked, does the school need to be so close? Have the developers considered adjusting the position of the school event, even if a few metres away? This is a large site, and we asked the school to reposition it further away from the boundary line. If the school is unable to be repositioned, would you consider installing external louvers to the windows that would overlook our part of the property? I believe some of the trees and hedgerows and proposed will not effectively prevent this from being useless if they're equally tall and towering. This will also cause difficulties in ensuring the boundary is maintained. Our property has rights to ensure that we maintain the boundary from the school land. How do the current plans for hedges and trees affect that right? Has this been considered? Issue 3, light. The other environmental impact of a building this size is light. We're concerned this proposed development, the building will significantly darken our property, both internally and externally, once it again impacting our well-being. Finish, I sincerely ask you to please take these points on board and make some changes to the plans. Please do not simply brush them off. We would welcome further discussions about our concerns and willing to assist wherever possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. Our next speaker is the agent, Mr. Liam Hopkins. You again will have 5 minutes, which is being timed.
Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Liam Hopkins, speaking on behalf of the applicant, Caerphilly County Borough Council's Education Authority. Thank you for the opportunity to address you with respect to the proposed classified school scheme. The development before you represents a significant project for the council. It's a major investment into an existing school site, which will provide an outstanding level of education to the community's young people and retain the site as a key local asset. The design of the school will be exemplary, with high quality architecture and landscape, creating outstanding internal and external learning environments. It will also meet exacting carbon neutral standards, looking to achieve net zero carbon status. In terms of capacity, that's already been addressed by the officer. I think that's an important point. The existing school has the capacity for 394 pupils plus a nursery. So the proposed new school, the capacity of 420 pupils plus a nursery is a modest increase. And it's also one that's been provided for the existing community, but also for some of the planned housing growth within the local area. As such, the school catchment will not be reached immediately upon opening, but will be reached gradually as future local homes are delivered. In approaching the site, the applicant has been very sensitive to the local area. For example, in delivering the scheme, it sought to improve how the site is accessed and operates. As part of the proposals, a new drop-off and pick-up point is proposed on Lewis Drive, which is adjacent to the school entrance, which will provide space for 6 vehicles to safely pick up and drop off. In addition, there's been a lot of work around the formal production of an initial framework travel plan, which looks to encourage sustainable and active travel to the site and to reduce emphasis on use of private vehicles. In terms of the local catchment, the school itself will serve the local area, so there's a great opportunity to encourage local travel on foot and bike and scooter, trying to instill lasting sustainable transport behaviours. As part of the permission, it's also worth noting that the applicant has worked closely with the Highway Authority and has agreed to improve active travel routes that are approaching the site, again as part of their overall provision to improve how the site is accessed. In respect to residential amenity, obviously it's a critically important matter, and noise has obviously been addressed. A noise assessment has been undertaken for the development. It does demonstrate that there will be no adverse noise levels experienced at adjacent properties, as the officers outlined, and there are also conditions on the permission that require the exact specification of the proposed plan to be provided before it's installed and used, and for that to demonstrate that it can achieve those noise levels. I think a key part for the siting of the school is the use. It's obviously in the location of where part of the existing school buildings are, so it represents good use of brownfield land. And then in terms of the actual plant itself, a lot of that is driven by the net zero carbon kind of requirements that are driving the school. It is a key requirement from the funding that it achieves those exemplary carbon neutral levels. In terms of lighting, that's another key factor. Lighting design is very sensitive. It's focused on making parking areas and paths safe and avoiding light spill on ecological features and trees and into adjacent properties. Again, sufficient conditions on the permission to control that. Privacy is another important matter, and the school building has been designed to try to step back while still delivering the education space that's required. To ensure, the privacy is retained, there is also a condition on there requiring a close boarded fence along the southern edge of the site to ensure that privacy. Landscape and ecology is another important consideration. The proposed design does include a lot of new landscape enhancement and retention of important on-site habitat like trees and woodland. The application is demonstrated through through the green infrastructure statement, biodiversity net gain, and there is principal support from officers, and there'll be detailed plans provided in accordance with further engagement with those officers. Construction is another key consideration on the site, as the school will remain in operation, or the site will remain in operation for education provision while the new school is built. A construction management plan has been provided, and that will be resubmitted to satisfy conditions. That will ensure that the site will operate safely in terms of access and ensure that construction activities don't adversely impact on air quality, noise levels and vibration. In order to conclude, I think the overall principle of developing a new school on this site is sound. It's within settlement, it's an existing school site of brownfield land. I think, to reiterate the opening address, the project does represent a major investment into community infrastructure, will benefit current and future generations. The applicant therefore fully supports the officer's recommendation to grant permission. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Hopkins. Another speaker, who is Councillor Anne Broughton-Pettit, who is the local ward member, and Councillor Anne Broughton-Pettit is speaking in support. Mr. Pettit, you're online.
Good evening, members of the
Yes.
Planning Committee. As a local ward member, shall I start?
Yes, please, do go ahead.
Okay. As a local ward member, I would like to express support on behalf of myself and fellow ward colleagues, Councillor Shane Cook and Councillor Jamie Pritchard, for the application to construct a two-form entry primary school that will replace the majority of the existing school facilities at Placervelin Primary School. Can I say from the outset, I believe the new facility will provide first-class educational opportunities for pupils attending the school. The new build, which has been made possible through the Council's Sustainable Communities for Learning programme and earmarked capital reserves, is an investment for the future, and I can speak for my ward colleagues when I say this development will provide a lasting legacy. The new build will incorporate community use, so the facility can be enjoyed by people outside of the school, so this is to be strongly welcomed. During the pre-application stage, residents requested loading bays and drop-off areas, and this has been acknowledged in the application before members. When balancing the views of residents regarding highways concerns and the footprint of the educational resource required, I am satisfied that there has been a good attempt to make sure resident opinion has been taken on board. There is wide support for the new school in the community. In terms of the new school build, this is something we, as local councillors, have been supporting for some significant time. Now let's make sure we deliver the school for the benefit of all. Thank you.
Very much, councillor. Members, the debate is in order and questions to be asked. Already in the queue is councillor Andrew Whitcomb. Andrew, you're online. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Subject to the conditions contained within the report, I'd like to move the recommendations of officers and recommend that that this project goes ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. That is noted. Next in the queue is councillor Adrian Hussey. Adrian.
Thank you, Chair. I'm more than happy to second this 21st century eco-friendly school, partly funded by the capital earmarked reserves. And with this, this administration putting our children's future at the forefront. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, councillor. Councillor Amanda McConnell, please, online.
Thank you, Chair. I got beaten to the post, but I'd just like to say that I'm fully in favour of this application and the positive impact it will bring to the community. Thanks.
Thank you very much, councillor. Councillor Shane Williams, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Like many of the other speakers, I fully welcome this development, but I just like to pick up what was said by one of the residents and addressing some of the concerns that was expressed about the noise. I heard that there was a noise impact assessment that's being carried out, but I don't think that's being placed yet. So I was just wondering, is there going to be a noise impact assessments on the heat pumps? Is there any mitigation planned if they are having that negative impact, that detrimental impact? And the other point about the close proximity, is it the concern was expressed about the overlooking feature? Is that something that we're concerned about when developing these plans? Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like me to come back in on those points, Chair?
Yes, please.
Right. Okay. So in respect of the noise, there has been a noise impact assessment submitted as part of the application. The primary mitigation measure in respect of noise, given it's a plant that is located on the roof of the school, is for acoustic and louver fencing around that plant in order to mitigate the impacts of that noise. That is something in looking at the report and looking at the measures that were proposed to put in place, that our environmental health officers were happy with. I don't know whether that's something that they would wish to raise any further comment on in this meeting. But subject to conditions, there's a condition recommended that the noise mitigation measures are put in place on there. There's also another condition on there, which refers to activities on the site in general, and requiring further details of all activities on the site that generate noise, and requiring them to be brought forward to us within a report, along with any potential mitigation measures for those. So there's also that condition that's in place as well. Subject to those conditions, the application is considered acceptable in respect of noise. Going on to the other point that was raised in respect of privacy and overlooking issues. I mean, just to clarify, so the one particular point in relation to Mr. Jones's property, the distance from the house is actually sort of 27 metres. In this case, the 22 metres is in relation to another house within that street where the property sits that little bit closer to the building. But it's not denied, obviously, that because we're moving from a single-storey building to a two-storey building That is going to be a big change for the residents, that they're going to be able to sort of view out their windows. And yeah, that's something that's obviously sort of part of development and putting a two-storey building up there. However, obviously, what we have to look at it in terms of when we look at applications is, you know, does it have an unacceptable impact on the amenity of neighbours? And given the distance that the building is to those neighbouring properties, 22 metres was quoted in the report as a minimum distance. You know, the distance at the closest point between the back of the property and the building that's proposed. Other properties, it starts to get a bit further away from that. But considering that, it's considered that the building is far enough away that it's not going to have an unacceptable impact when it comes to matters such as overlooking, overshadowing, loss of light, and it's not going to be considered to be overbearing on properties either.
Thank you very much. I've had indications from two members. Councillor Mike Adams first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for those last few comments, Helen. The question I was going to ask is, are we likely to have any discussions with Mr. Jones about the way that we can make sure that he is happy with the final development that he's going to be facing? Because I'm going through exactly the same thing in Parliament Drive with what's happening with the CWL, this hopefully near completion. So thanks very much for that. Can you just answer, are we likely to have discussions?
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Helen, would you like to come back with that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we obviously consulted neighbours as part of the planning application, and they've had an opportunity to have their say through the usual way in the planning application process. Mr. Jones has chosen to take up and chosen to make comments on this application. We haven't had those discussions, and you know, it's not something we'd normally have. You know, there's a chance to put in your objection and a chance to have your objection considered, but we don't normally sort of enter into discussions about the applications, about those objections with the objectors at application stage. There is no formal process really for having those discussions at post-application stage. That having been said, obviously, if Mr. Jones or any of the neighbours do have any concerns about the development as it progresses, they are of course welcome to contact the planning department to discuss those particular concerns.
Thank you, Helen. Can you confirm that the local residents near to the new school had the original letters sent out to them?
Yes, Councillor, in line with what we normally do with our consultation procedures, the properties adjoining the school received consultation letters. There were site notices put up, and due to the size of the application, it was also advertised with a press notice as well.
Thank you for that confirmation. Councillor Nelson Power, please.
Sorry, only one point. We're still on the noise we are. On page 50, it's got a noise plant. I know we spoke briefly about the noise in the surrounding areas. It's got the environmental health manager requested conditions in respect of noise mitigation. I'm just wondering, I know the speaker against mentioned the ground source heat pump. I'm just wondering what those conditions look like for that plant. It seems a concern raised by the speaker against was obviously the ground source heat pump is part of the plant. And I'm just wondering what those conditions look like for noise mitigation against that plant.
Well, yes, I mean, the conditions are contained within the report. But I can find the numbers of those for you. So, condition 13 in the report talks about noisy activities on the site. So, that's actually sort of a more wider consideration than just this plant, because obviously when you're considering noise, you've got to consider all sources of noise on a site, and what the impact of those sources of noise are. What that requires, that condition, is that there are further details in respect of noisy activities submitted. That's within 3 months of the commencement of the development. The details of those are submitted, and if it's considered necessary, any mitigation measures are provided for those, and a timetable for their implementation. Now, it may well be that there's no need for further mitigation measures, as you know, to be submitted as part of that condition, but obviously we don't know that that's going to be the case until we had those details submitted. So there's that one. The other one is condition 25, which sets out that the acoustic mitigation strategy within the noise impact assessment that was submitted shall be implemented prior to the first beneficial use of the building that's being proposed. And obviously, as I said, the primary mitigation measure in respect of that is the fencing that is proposed around there in order to avoid significant noise impacts from that plant.
Thanks for that, great.
Thank you. The recommendation is that permission be granted subject to the conditions contained in the officer's report. There has been a mover, Councillor Andrew Whitcomb, and a seconder, Councillor Adrian Hussey. Any amendments, please? There are none. So I would like to ask, sorry,
Chair, can I just mention that the subject to delegated powers. Condition 2 as well.
Right.
That's great. Yeah.
I see the director on you.
Sorry, Chair.
Our legal officer, Lisa Lane, please.
Yeah, just to clarify that the recommendation that's been moved and seconded is that permission be granted subject to conditions contained in the report and subject to delegated approval being given to the planning officer to amend condition 2 as outlined by Helen in the presentation.
Move.
Thank you. We will go to the vote now, members. The vote will take place via Microsoft Forms. Members, you will notice that the pop-up box will appear on screen shortly. Please be aware that the vote that appears is for councillors' use only and should appear on anybody else's screen. Please close it down. Vote. And we will wait for the validation from Lisa Lane.
Chair, and that recommendation is duly carried unanimously, 12 votes for.
Thank you very much, members and visitors. Thank you very much for being with us this evening. You're free to leave now if you so wish.
You.
Oh, yeah. A quick swim in. Oh, thanks for that.
Thank you. Agenda item number 8. Application 25 Pico 243 of Leek Forum. Land at Kilfynydd Substation, Graenleven, Lyshin, Common Road, Llanfadden, and the case officer is Mr. Anthony Pine. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, Chair. I will just share the presentation. That should be coming up before you now.
Yes.
This application seeks planning permission to install electrical equipment on an area of the Kilfynydd substation in Llanfadden. The application also includes a cable run to the south of the substation. I will go through the presentation with members and explain the proposal. So this is a site layout. This is in the southeast of the Kilfynydd substation. I've got some aerial photographs to help with orientation. Things to note on here is you can see my cursor. The electrical equipment is to be installed here. To the south of that, there is what's called an HDD corridor. This is relates to horizontal directional drilling. So the cable would be drilled under the ground south and then turning west along the road and turning further south. This is an aerial photograph of the substation with Llanfadden on the eastern side. This is just given for context. The existing Kilfynydd substation is obviously significant in size. Where we were looking at before is, if you can see my cursor now, as I say, within the sort of southeast area here, and then running south and along the road with the cable corridor. This shows slightly more configuration of the equipment, which is going to include an electrical reactor building, earth switches, circuit breakers and disconnectors, various transformers, the cable I was mentioning, cable sealing ends. The area proposed is around 35 metres by 52 metres in terms of the equipment area, and the tallest structure 12.5 metres. This aerial photograph is slightly more zoomed in. You can see that there's been some work in the area, both of where the electrical equipment is going and further north. The local planning authority has had clarification from National Grid that that work is being undertaken utilising National Grid's permitted development rights. Of interest, perhaps to members, is just to the east, there's a tree belt, and then the other sort of brown area that you can see on this aerial photograph is the synchronous condenser site that was brought before members some time ago, and ground preparations have commenced there. This shows the elevations of that equipment, which I just alluded to in terms of reactor and the transformers and other equipment. And moving on to site photographs. So this, just for context, this is taken from the northern boundary, looking across the area National Grid are utilising permitted development rights. The proposed site in terms of the equipment would be at the background, roughly where the digger is shown here. This is just to show context of the existing kind of substation equipment visible on the right-hand side of this photograph, which would be west of the new equipment to be installed. This is moving around, showing the area in the background with the area to install the cable running out to the road behind, through the tree screening behind. And this is just swinging around further east to show some more of the existing site boundary with that tree buffer in between this part of the site and then the separate synchronous condenser that's some distance to the east. Moving on to some photographs just to show the externals outside of the substation. This is taken from the road that runs north along the boundary effectively. This is the existing entrance to the substation itself. You can just see onto that land, the northern part, just peeking through the trees there. This is taken from the north on the common road there, showing existing tree screening. Obviously in leaf, as this photograph was taken, there's fairly significant screening there, obviously will thin out during the winter months, but will be seen in conjunction with the existing substation. This is moving to the road that bounds the southern half of the site. It's likewise, there's a fair amount of vegetation, albeit that at the moment it's in leaf, so it potentially would be more visible in the winter time. A landscape and visual impact assessment has been submitted with the application. This is the view from Llanfabon Cemetery. It is difficult to see, but there is a green line that's been added where my cursor is just showing here. That's sort of superimposing the equipment due to the topography. It's sort of set down in this view, and it would be behind the existing tree screening. The landscape architect has reviewed the landscape visual impact assessment. This is moving sort of northwest of the site. You can see actually the smaller, I've indicated where the viewpoint's being taken from. So it's taken from that circle looking sort of southeast back towards the substation. Again, the equipment would be seen in conjunction with the existing equipment from this view primarily, just outlining where that is. A wider view now taken some distance to the south from the Rumney Valley Ridgeway Walk, just showing the kind of context. And there's obviously significant sort of pylons in the area as existing, and the substation is background here with the new equipment seen in conjunction with the large substation from distant views. So the application was advertised by site notices and neighbour notification letters. 4 representations were received. These are detailed and addressed in the officer report. I have to update members that we've had some late correspondence. The neighbouring authority, Rhondda and Bath, responded to the application. They've raised no objections to the proposal. They have provided some comments from their highways team, and it's these have been reviewed and it's deemed acceptable to provide these to the applicant as informative advice. One further thing to bring to members' attention and just to ask Chair is that following the completion of the report, there's been discussion with the applicant on the precise wording of condition 10, which is in relation to a noise verification report. The Environmental Health Officer has been party to these discussions and finds the minor alteration proposed to be acceptable, which is not considered to alter the overall requirements of the condition. Members are therefore requested, if they're minded to approve the application, that delegated authority is given to officers to finalise the wording of this condition. That's condition 10. And the application is recommended subject to approval and the conditions detailed in the report, the proviso that I just mentioned about condition 10. Chair.
Very much. We have 2 speakers, and these your representations will be timed to 5 minutes. And the first speaker I have is Mr. Graham Richards Thank you, and if you're speaking in objection to this application.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I have lived in the parish of Llanfairpwll since 1980. The Kilfunny transmission substation has got much bigger over the years, with them having permitted development causing visual impact, as I now live 200 metres from the substation. Character of the area is changing from countryside to industrial. I have taken it. You have visited the Kilfunny transmission substation. Recently noticed this planning application has already been started since December 2024 under permitted development, but it's for private companies, infrastructure. I'm very concerned about this application because the noise monitoring that has been carried out in the area is not correct due to the fact that we have a problem with noise from the substation. And until the noise is sorted out, this plan application should be put on hold. No one came to my property to take a noise report on the National Grid at last week. That they are taking responsible steps, National Grid are. The noise nuisance at the end of this year by enclosing the reacting that they put in 2016. In the meantime, we have very loud bands from the blast circuit breakers, some are 90.4 decibels. It's like a bomb going off. It rattles my windows, my pictures fall off on the wall in the stairs, the kitchen. If you're outside on the yard, the highway of the ground moves. Circuit breakers, in 20 years' time, they said they'd change up the gas ones. National Grid hoped to address this in November 2025, but they promised this December 2024 and it never happened. They missed the slot. Environmental Health Officers Department has monitored this problem and has visited my property, which is ongoing. National Grid understands our concerns regarding the number of proposed developments coming near to my property. Unfortunately, they are not in direct control of the third-party renewable energy developments, which is currently coming forward. National Grid are legally obliged to connect these developments, assuming they meet various and other criteria. To the electricity transmission substation, they make a formal connection request. I've also been told the synchronous condenser, which was passed on the 13th of December 2023, will make a noise. All the planning being passed in the parish of Llanfairpwll, not Nelson or Kilfunny, the parish of Llanfairpwll, will or has caused property blight like mine or planning blight and other properties. Is there compensation available? Who is going to pay it? Councils, government, utility companies. The people living in properties around this substation, which is 5, have either died of cancer, got cancer like myself, because of the magnetic fields which everybody plays down. People living near this substation have got problems with noise. It's as simple as that. Affecting our well-being, loss of employment, enjoyment, visual impact from my house. Work's going on at the moment. Synchronous condenser. There's 2 lots of battery units will be put in for planning. It's affecting our well-being. My wife and I are on sleeping tablets because we got the same sound through the day, but dead at night it comes in. If it's raining, if it's windy, it's all connected. But we need to solve all this out, like, you know, it's as simple as that. That's about it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richards. I'd like to call in now Mr. Jack Paisley, who is the agent. And again, 5 minutes, Mr. Paisley. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Pike. Thank you, Mr. Richards, as well. Just to take my time this afternoon, the opportunity to speak to you about the application, briefly hear an overview of the scheme and response to some of the comments made, if I may. The application before you is for a piece of electrical infrastructure at the existing Kilfunny substation that will enhance existing infrastructure and enable renewable energy to be connected into the grid. Rather than look at the technical details, it's something similar to the National Grid campaign last year, with large plugs being escorted around the country and plugged into the system to align with the great power upgrade that the country is going through and that vision of a cleaner, more affordable energy future. But back to our scheme. As the case officer's report outlines, the key considerations of the proposed development includes that it's strongly supported by national and local planning policy, including Caerphilly's local development plan, which enables or allows development associated with infrastructure outside of settlements to come forward where appropriate, with Future Wales that supports renewable energy and associated infrastructure such as this, and Planning Policy Wales, where electrical infrastructure is crucial for sustainability across the country and within Caerphilly. As noted, the application has been accompanied by a series of surveys and assessments which demonstrate that, mentioned already, that the noise levels from this scheme are considered to be acceptable by the Environmental Health Officer, both in isolation but also alongside the cumulative developments such as the synchronous condenser and the existing substation. And this is controlled via planning conditions agreed with the authority and are control on the development in perpetuity. In regard to any heritage impacts, there are no unacceptable effects as noted by both HENIB and CADU, both again in isolation and cumulatively. In respect of ecology, noting the tree belt to the south of the site, there are no impacts to species on site through the use of the drilling underneath National Road, and we're also including biodiversity net benefit on the site as is required in policy. As demonstrated by the visualisation shown on screen, there are negligible landscape effects and minimal visual impacts given its setting and existing industrialised location. And again, this is acceptable against LDP policies. And finally, in highways terms, it's acceptable by both Caerphilly's highways officers and those of the Welsh Government Highways Department, and utilises the existing access into the substation site. I note Mr. Richards' concerns around electromagnetic fields, and they are dealt with by the officer on page 12 before you. So again, to come back around, both development aligns with Caerphilly's LDP and the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which the authority are obliged on when making decisions such as planning applications. And this is looking towards the long-term benefits for our communities. The applicant does recognise that applications like this lead to change in the local and wider environment, but the change here is considered to be acceptable and is efficient use of the existing substation, utilising that small gap as shown on screen by earlier. The applicant has been and continues to liaise locals to ensure minimal disruption is caused during any construction of the assets, whether it's its operation. Again, we have controls on that wider conditions attached to the permission for you today. The application is largely on existing substation and on private land, so sought to minimise that disruption. And again, the conditions attached to it by a planning application give the council greater control. In conclusion, the application is for essential electrical infrastructure that's fully consistent with national and local planning policies that aim to secure Wales's renewable energy future and support its low carbon ambitions. Comprehensive assessments have demonstrated that any potential impacts on landscape, noise, heritage, ecology and highways are either negligible, manageable or acceptable to proposed mitigation and conditions. As such, and as per the recommendation, I duly ask members vote for approval of this application for your time.
Ms. Spenceley. We have indication of question from Councillor James Castle, please.
Come on. Sorry, Chair, a bit tardy. Yeah, I had a question really in relation to the environmental impact assessment. There was none required. And I'm just questioning it and might answer the question myself, is that it's within the existing site and it's already been cleared. But I'm just wondering what, even though it's an existing, it's a vegetative, it was a green site.
why that may not have been required in the first place. And picking up on Mr. Richards' plight, and note on page 81 that we've got environmental noise assessment mentioned, and perhaps we could reach out to Mr. Richards should that be appropriate from the Environmental Health Department, because looking at the decibel levels within the report, it suggests that Mr. Richards suggests that they are considerably above that at times when these circuit breakers go. And I'm not too sure how you may be able to monitor that in isolation, because it's obviously, well, I'm assuming it doesn't happen on a clockwork basis. But if you could just answer the one on the environmental impact assessment, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Fussell. The issue of EIA is related to the fact that this development will facilitate a larger development of national significance, which was considered by welfare ministers, which is the wind turbines, 11 of which are in our borough and goes into RCT. It wouldn't change the character of that development, but because there's a connection in terms of it interfacing with that larger development, that was why it was considered, but not found necessary.
Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to bring in Mrs. Kerry Davis from the Environmental Health Department. Kerry, please.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I just wanted to comment on the noise questions. We've assessed the noise report that was submitted by the applicant. The outcome of that was that the noise from the proposed electrical equipment would raise the sound in the existing sound by approximately 1 decibel, which is almost the human ear cannot witness such a very small change in the noise environment. It needs an increase of about 3 decibels for our human ear to detect that change. Under the BS 4142 type assessment that they've done as well, as long as the change is less than 5 decibels, it's deemed to be acceptable in noise terms. So yeah, it's going to be almost inaudible, that change in the noise environment as we would detect it. But to ensure that the report is accurate, obviously they work on factory settings when they do their assessment to model the likely outcome. So we've asked for a verification condition to go on the application permission if it is approved, so that when the equipment is up and running, a verification assessment will be undertaken to ensure that the plant is complying with what was modelled originally in the report. We've also asked for a complaints procedure to be given by the applicant, so that if there are any complaints received directly to themselves or via us, that they will be investigated in accordance with that complaints procedure. Obviously, the complaints procedure will only look at the noise complaints associated with this particular equipment and not any existing equipment. So yeah, I just wanted to give reassurance that it's all been assessed fully by Environmental Health.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Can we see this? Patrick, sorry. Oh, Shane, I'm terribly sorry.
That's all right, Chair. It was just a follow up on that one. I think that's to be welcomed that there is a complaints procedure for Mr. Richards or anyone else to go down. And I take the point, Kerry, that is related to this planning application and nothing that is existing. But I was just wondering, because I think Mr. Richards suggested the level of noise that he's currently experiencing. And if we add in what may come about, decibel or whatever higher, so it's cumulative. Is there anything that he could do then to outside the scope of this planning then, but that he could pursue to address what may be happening now, coupled with what may happen when it's all joined together?
Thank you for that query. Ms Davis, would you want to comment on Councillor Shane Williams's comment, please?
Yeah, I regularly communicate with Mr. Richards about his existing complaint about a piece of equipment on the National Grid substation, the shunt reactor. So National Grid have undertaken their own noise assessment, and they've determined that it no longer meets the factory specifications that they thought it would comply with. So as a result, they've committed to putting an enclosure around this particular shunt reactor. The delay has been because they have to apply for the outage from the National Energy Council, and obviously it depends on supply and demand as to whether that outage is accepted or whether it's denied. So at the moment we're led to believe that the outage is going to be towards the end of this year, before they'll be able to get that outage and put the enclosure around the shunt reactor. Just as an aside, that the shunt reactor that's proposed on this development is significantly smaller than the shunt reactor that's currently causing some noise issues for Mr. Richards. The other complaint that he mentioned is about the air blast circuit breakers. They are inherently noisy. And as Mr. Richards said, there are no short-term or even medium-term plans for National Grid to replace these with the slightly quieter gas-generated circuit breakers. But they are only used to prevent sort of a fault or an overloading of the system, or when they test the system. Mr. Richards apparently is informed if they're undertaking a test on the system, so he's aware that they will be activated. But other than that, they should only be activated to prevent, an oversurge or if there's a fault in the system.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that information, Ms Davis. The recommendation for this application is that it should be granted, subject to the conditions in the officer's report, plus a proviso that condition 10, minor alteration, have received delegated permission, and also the verification assessment in regards to the noise, plus the complaints procedure be added to this application as well. And members, we will go to the vote. And tell me, sorry, Mr. Pine, our officer.
No problem. It's almost all correct. It is just the minor alteration to the wording of condition 10 that we're seeking authorisation from. The complaints procedure is already in the report. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. Members, now go to the vote. Thank you.
Chair.
Sorry.
You got to move the report, Chair, to include those amendments on the items noted, which I will do for you.
Oh, thank you very much, Councillor Hessel. Much appreciated. Seconder, please.
I'll second you.
Thank you, Councillor Angel. Members, we will now go to the vote.
The first recommendation is that permission be granted subject to officers finalising condition 10.
The vote will take place through Microsoft Forms. Please be aware that the vote that appears is for councillors' use only, and should it appear on anybody else's screen, please close it down. Please give us a moment to verify this vote.
And Chair, that recommendation is carried unanimously. Votes in favour.
Thank you very much. Thank you visitors for your attendance, and you may leave the meeting now if you wish, or you can stay to hear the rest of the proceedings this evening. Thank you both.
That's good enough.
Agenda item number 4. Application number 22/0878 RM. Edgeworths and Ross Pallets of Old Highways Depot, Podlotting Link Road, Podlotting Bargoed, CF81 9QZ. The case officer is Mr. Joshua Burrows. Joshua, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share the presentation. The next application is the former highway depot in Podlotting, currently operating as Edwards and Ross Pallets. The application is a reserve matters application following the original outline permission approved in 2016 and subsequently renewed in 2019. The outline consent was for up to 25 dwellings, however this reserve matters application is for 16 dwellings. The site is at the northern edge of Podlotting and adjacent to the A469. The site also forms part of the HG 1.7 housing allocation in the LDP. The site is a raised plateau sitting above the link road and is screened by a landscape embankment. The site boundary is also lined with mature trees. The site is accessed by a single access located on the northern end of the site. On screen are photographs of the site. The left-hand photo is looking at the site from the south, the right-hand looking from the north, and again, the left-hand photo is from the north showing the access as well, and there's an aerial image there just showing the state of the site at the moment. Screen is the proposed site layout. As mentioned, there's 16 dwellings proposed. Dwellings are accessed via the existing access at the north, with an adoptable road running along the western boundary and private roads leading from it. Each dwelling will be served with at least 3 off-street parking spaces via driveways, garages, or both. The layout has been designed to avoid overlooking and privacy issues along with any overbearing impacts. Each of the dwellings fronts the road with main entrances of fenestration to clearly define the front elevation and promote active frontage. There are 3 house styles proposed, which are a mixture of 3, 4, and 5 bedrooms with detached and semi-detached houses. 2 of the house types are shown on screen, with the 3rd and the garage. The site will be viewed in isolation and therefore will not be seen in context with the nearest surrounding dwellings. As such, there is no street scene to fit in with the such. As a result, the design is considered to be acceptable, with clear similarities between 3 house styles. As mentioned earlier, the site is bound with mature trees and is retained as part of the application. The area is a built form of avoiding impact on existing trees. Soft landscaping has also been proposed through hedgerows, trees, lawns and shrubs. An area of public open space is being provided within the centre of the site, which will also include a play area. The application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions detailed in the report. We would also like to seek delegated authority to amend the wording of conditions 3 and 4. The intention and purpose of the conditions remains the same, however, the wording will be more specific. These relate to areas of parking and highways works outside the site and within the site, so that the wording just is more specific in terms of what we're looking for. Thank you.
You mentioned Mr. Burrows. I'm to call in Councillor Gregg.
No speakers on this one. I'm not surprised to be called in so quickly. No, it seems like this application, looking at the history of it, obviously there are quite a few changes made in 2019. And I know really that in the consultation, some officers have raised an objection, the senior engineer, with regard to drainage. The placemaking officer has raised some concerns regarding the layout, particularly around parking areas, elevations, etc. And finally, the landscape architect has raised concerns with the lack of detail as regards the play area and equipment. So really my question to officers is, with regard to those three specific objections and concerns raised by fellow officers, what are the mitigating or circumstances mitigate against them, particularly the drainage, which I think is a
Yeah, so the drainage will be covered through the SAB process, so we wouldn't look to duplicate that here. With regard to the placemaking officer, those comments were based on earlier revisions, so we've since there's been a few revisions since then, so we've addressed some of the issues raised by the officer. Some of them weren't particularly planning related and weren't addressed. And with regard to the landscape architect, there's conditions on the outline consent which cover a lot of what has been asked for. So they would have to be discharged at a later date. So all of those concerns should be addressed at that point.
Thank you. Can I call in Mr. Mansell Power, please? And Councillor.
Yeah, thanks. This actually sits in my ward, so there would have been a couple of little concerns. Greg did pick them up really. No responses from residents at all, no. Nothing at all, okay?
No, none at all. It's been advertised a few times as well because there are revised plans, but no response.
Okay. Again, like Greg, no details on the play area and the drainage, lack of information. I just wondering why we get into this stage today and those are not completed in place. When you expect it, one application to be fulfilled and complete. The drainage one was a little concern, and we obviously now another 25 properties feeding into the main water courses. With extensive flooding we've had the last couple of years. How are we mitigating against the flooding, because it seems they're just adding this drainage into the existing drainage. There doesn't seem to be any infrastructure in for these additional properties. So I just wondered, was that considered the drainage? And the other question I had was the access onto the main road. It is a fast road. I'm turning right for me and coming out the side. It does access onto the main road, yeah, on the bypass, yeah. There's been a few accidents just a bit further down the village, and as on a slight bit, I got some concern with coming up that site and turning right. I can understand it was left only, but crossing the highway to turn right would be a concern for me. I just want the traffic manage that. Apart from obviously welcome the development, just those few little bits and pieces of clarity. Hey, thank you.
Yeah, so the original outline was for 25 houses, but this reserve this is only 16 houses. And with the drainage, the outline and the renewal were before SAB was introduced. But now we're at the point where SAB is required for developments. It wouldn't be covered again in the time application. The play equipment is covered under the outline consent as well, so they'll need to provide details of that under that permission. And then with regard to the access, there's no objection in terms of the access safety from the Highways Department. So they want any sort of improvement sorters after that.
Yeah, it's just the access. I mean, knowing the site and knowing the road, coming up on that main road, turning right, it's on a slight bend and it's high speed road. I did have some concerns with the access. I don't know if they're going to address that. I don't know.
Lisa, is she in the meeting? Maybe to provide more details.
Hi.
Lisa?
Yeah. Probably is this obviously it had an extant use as the highways depot, so that access would have been sort of in regular use. So the sort of the principle of the access is well established. Obviously this is just like reserve matter stage now. So again, the acceptability of that access has kind of been accepted. In terms of visibility, again, because it was like an extant access, it'd be difficult sort of to raise an objection at this sort of stage. If it was a brand new access, I mean, obviously, the extant use of the provided traffic generation of its own. Yeah, in terms of, I'm just checking actually within the application whether a transport assessment was undertaken. I don't know, Josh, whether a transport assessment was undertaken for this?
Not for this application.
Not for this particular one, no. Just in terms of, obviously, councillor mentions collisions, whether that had been addressed by the applicant. But, you know, overall, difficult one because obviously it's already got outline consent for the use of this access, and it was well established for use as a highways depot, which would have created sort of trips of its own.
As was indicated, this is a reserve partners application, so we are considering just reserve partners into the second design, extended clearance and so on. So as I say, the principle of the access has already been established at the outline stage. And as was indicated, the outline approvals for more dwellings and things like that. So we addressed in previous permission, so probably not something at this stage we can consider in detail.
Yeah, it's one of those ones we've been driving on a bit, and yeah, okay, thanks for that.
And Councillor Reid, please.
I don't have another question. It's just with regard to the SUDS. I don't really understand what, you know, you've said SUDS is required, but what does that mean in practice? You've said we're at the reserved matters stage. Is SUDS a reserved matter? What, you know?
So SAB is a completely separate regulatory regime brought in 2019 now, I think. So that would require separate consent for the surface water drainage. That would be dealt with by our drainage colleagues. So whereas perhaps historically we might have considered surface water drainage a bit more detail, because it's a separate regulatory system now, we can't duplicate that. Obviously, we consult with them and there will be dialogue on which always the partners can be addressed. They need to go through that process.
So it's a separate process. So even if we approved the reserve matters today, they could still prevent the development from going ahead.
That's correct. So they would need similar way to planning. We need to have approval before we can get to development.
Thanks very much for that.
So if I can come in as well, in terms of the SAB process, as we said, it's a separate process, but Henderson SAB and sustainable urban drainage is that water shouldn't flow into the existing sewers. So they should be looking to contain the water on the site and deal with it on site. Whether that's attenuation ponds or whether it's reams or whether they've been intended to. That's what these SAB submissions are going to look at really. So there are areas within the site which they've been provided as landscape areas and so on and so forth, which could be then used to accommodate those drainage features, which are moving forward. But it should be looking at no increase in surface water drainage off the site. Also, not what's there at the moment, and indeed a 30% improvement on what's there.
Highways Officer Lisa Cooper, please.
Oh, hi, yeah. I was just quickly checking the collision data as brought up by the member earlier. Quickly looking at crash map, and this is only showing like the last 5 years of data. There are no recorded collisions, and recorded collisions would be anything involving any sort of injury, be it sort of minor or even, you know, resulting in a fatality. But there's no sort of collisions recorded. That's not to say there haven't been sort of minor sort of bumps which didn't result in any injuries, but the only ones we have on records are anything which would have resulted in hospital treatment. And there aren't any. Just checking that quickly. I just wanted to clarify that one really.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that information, Lisa. The recommendation is that permission be granted subject to the conditions contained in the officer's report. Conditions 3 and 4 includes delegated powers for specific wording. Is that right?
Yeah, just some minor tweaks to the wording just to make it more specific to the conditions.
Lovely. Members, we could go to the vote now, please. Oh, sorry, I can see an indication.
So have we had a mover for it? I can't remember.
Can I move the report with the officers delegating on conditions 3 and 4 in connection with parking, highways, line of sight?
Thank you, Councillor.
That's right. Yes, yes. Councillor Fussell did. Yes, that's okay.
Thanks. Can we have a seconder, please?
I'll second then if there wasn't one.
Thank you. So we have Councillor Fussell moving and Councillor Mike Adams seconding. Can we go to the vote now, which is before you were online? Members, you will see the pop-up box. Please submit your vote.
Chair, that recommendations do be carried unanimous.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 6. Application number 24/0652/Paul. Land at former Nyren Labour Club, Heelan Nyren, Penrag, Billy. Case officer is Miss Helen Winsor. Helen, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share my presentation. So as has been said, this is for land which used to accommodate the former Nyren Labour Club. It's in Penrag, Philly. That's the location plan for it. That shows the buildings on there, but they have subsequently been demolished. So you can see from the aerial photograph, that's the site, essentially the building's been demolished, and the site at the moment is largely hard standing with some vegetation around the edge. Look at the site photographs. That's a photograph taken from Helen Nyren, looking towards the site. You can see a building on the left hand side of the photograph. The larger building is the community centre. Then there's a white building in front of that, which is a former betting shop adjacent to the site. Again, that's a similar photograph, and that's taken from Caledwyn. It's it's sort of close to the junction, so it's just looking at it from a different angle. Again, we've got another photograph there that shows the community centre and the betting shop and the access. There's also another photograph here. I don't know if you can see the building on the left-hand side of that, but that's a former taxi office that is no longer in use, which is adjacent to the site. And you've got another photograph of the building taken from Helen in there as well. So just looking at the proposed plans for this. This is the proposed layout plan. As you can probably see from this, the building is towards the front of the site. Then there is parking that is proposed behind. The existing access is proposed to be utilised for the development. So here we've got the proposed elevations on there. It's mainly proposed to be finished in brick with some beach cladding and some grey tiles for the roof. It's supposed to be a 3-storey development with a pitch roof. And that's just a 3D view of the site there as opposed to be built, and the further one there, looking at a different angle of that site. So in terms of the issues, is the building of housing on that site is considered acceptable. We had to consider when we were considering development that there was a community facility in terms of the social club on that site, and as a result, the applicant was required to submit some information to demonstrate that community facility was surplus to requirements. The information that was submitted was perhaps it didn't quite demonstrate that with the level of detail which may have been ideally wanting on that. There was enough detail in there to suggest it's very unlikely that it would be redeveloped for a community facility. In addition, we're mindful of housing need as well, and the need to provide additional housing in the area, which has got to be weighed into the planning balance as well. The site is also considered acceptable in respect of the access, noting that it does utilise the existing access, and also in terms of neighbour amenity and design as well. So the application is recommended for a approval. That's subject to a Section 106 agreement. The application is proposed as a 100% affordable housing development. It's proposed for 29 flats, which will be provided as affordable housing. It would, however, obviously we can't guarantee that it would be used as affordable housing, and under our policies we require that development is provided for at least 40% affordable housing. So in order to ensure that there is an appropriate proportion of affordable housing secured on that site, a recommendation is for approval subject to conditions, and also subject to a Section 106 agreement to provide for 40% affordable housing, but noting that it's likely, given the proposal that come forward, that the proportion of affordable housing will actually be greater than that. Just some updates following the report being written. We have had some further landscape comments on this one, and the council's landscape architect has requested some amendments to the landscaping scheme and management plan. As a result of this, the condition referring to landscaping will need to be amended. Also, the plans condition. And also a further condition added in for a management plan as well. So if members are minded to approve this application, I would request that delegated powers are granted to amend conditions 2 and 20 of the report, and also to add a new condition in there in order to deal with those landscaping and landscaping management issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. The debate is in order, and if there is, Councillor Massey, you've indicated.
Yeah, I don't think there's any objection to this as a beneficial development for housing. They're obviously thinking of the demographic of the Caerphilly Basin. So I'll move the officer's report and it to include the landscape condition plus management plan, and delegate the points 2 and 20 for those additional changes to take place. Thank you.
Very much. Councillor Greg Eade.
Yeah, obviously as being a board member, planning officers may be pleasantly surprised. I have no objections or issues with this application whatsoever, but I want to just convey the views of the local community council who actually meets in the building next door, but it was after the deadline, so I'm just going to verbally present that my fellow community councillors pretty much as a majority support this application. It will bring a sympathetically designed large housing development of 1 and 2 bedroom flats to our ward, which is absolutely crying out for accommodation, as is most of the county. I understand that. But we think that this will be, you know, a really good use of what is a completely derelict site at the moment. And there's very little prospect of that being used for any kind of community hub now that the previous building was demolished. So yeah, the local community council is fully in support of this application.
Very much, Councillor sound. Right, the officer's recommendation is that the application be deferred to allow the applicant to enter into a section 106 application for the following: 40% of residential units provided as affordable housing. On completion of section 106 application, that B, permission be granted, subject to the conditions contained in the officer's report, which includes, as Councillor Castle has mentioned and moved, conditions 2 and 3, landscaping management. So, members, if we could go to
Sorry, Chair. It's amending conditions 2 and 20.
2 and 20.
Two being the plans and documents condition, 20 being the landscaping condition, and also to add a new condition in respect of landscape management.
Right, thank you very much for that clarification. I'm sorry I got it wrong. Thank you very much, members. It's been moved and seconded. Could we just let us just to confirm?
Yeah, I'll confirm that it's too much gobbledygook really, but there we are.
That's lovely. Yeah, the seconder was Councillor Reid, I believe.
Yeah, seconder.
Lovely. Thank you very much, members. We will go to the online voting slip. Members, you will see the pop-up box appearing. Please submit your vote. And verification will come from our legal officer, Lisa.
That's unanimously held 12.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, members and officers, for being with me this evening for this extended meeting of the Planning Committee. That concludes the evening's business. I would like to thank you all, and I declare the meeting